Okay.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Wilf Day. I've been a board member since 2004. I live in Port Hope, Northumberland County, Ontario, on the Treaty Territory of the Mississauga. My co-host today is Tara Shustarian, and Gisela Ruckert will be doing our timing. They are both fellow board members. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available via our website later. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations and communities across Canada. Excuse me, I was interrupting myself to do something. These lands have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial and continue to be home to vibrant cultures, languages, and traditions. We recognize and honor the diverse and distinct Indigenous peoples, including the First Nations, Inuit, Métis, who have stewarded these lands for countless generations. We express our deep respect for their contributions, resilience, and ongoing presence. We acknowledge the impact of colonization, forced displacement, and ongoing struggles faced by Indigenous peoples, as well as the historic and ongoing injustices they have endured. We commit to listening, learning, and working towards reconciliation and building positive relationships with Indigenous communities. We recognize that land acknowledgements alone are not enough. We must actively engage in decolonization, support Indigenous self-determination, and work towards restoring Indigenous rights, sovereignty, and land stewardship. May we strive to create a more just and inclusive society that values and respects the rich heritage, knowledge, and wisdom of the Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands since time immemorial. Okay, let's move on to hearing from our candidates. We have now 8 candidates. Marcel Pelican has just withdrawn because he has not only joined the provincial board for his profession, but is now running for a school board. So thanks to the 8 candidates who have offered to serve on Travel Canada's board of directors, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us to learn more about them today. This is a large group, so we will be very strict with the timing to ensure that everyone gets equal space. We have 7 candidates with us live. 1 has sent a recording. I'll turn this over to Tara to give an overview.
Sorry, can I just jump in, Tara, before you start? I just wanted to make sure that the candidates are aware that we'll be using timing cards. So please make sure that you can see my screen, Gisela Ruckert, screened at all times. You'll get this when you have 10 seconds left. And then please stop when you see this one. I hope that's clear to everyone. Thank you. Go ahead, Tara. Sorry about that.
No. Thanks for that reminder, Gisela, because I think people will be looking for where's the cue card. So thank you, Wilf, also for that beautiful land acknowledgement that grounds us and starts us in a good way always. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tara Shustarian, and I am coming to you from Burnaby in BC on the unceded traditional territories of the Hunkaminam and Squamish-speaking peoples, the Musqueam, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Coquitlam nations. So I will briefly go through our layout for today. First, there will be candidate introductions for about 2 minutes, for 2 minutes each, with a focus on specific skills and experiences that make one a good candidate for a governance board. Then we'll have our first round of questions, where candidates will answer one question each that they've chosen from a preset list, which was sent to them earlier. That will be for 1 minute each. The second round of questions, candidates were given a list of 8 questions to prepare, but don't know which one they will be called upon to answer. Again, that's for 1 minute each. The third round, the candidates will answer questions, some of which are selected from those submitted by our Fair Vote members earlier this month. That again will be 1 minute each. Then there'll be candidate closing statements, again, 1 minute each, and then a brief conclusion from Wilf. Over to you, Wilf, and Wilf will give us some housekeeping and technical reminders before we begin. Thanks.
Thank you, Kara. Those who have taken part in Zoom meetings before may be used to using the chat function. The chat is turned off today so as to keep the focus on the candidates. Most of these questions are to give our candidates a chance to prepare thoughtful answers. We also asked our members to submit questions in advance, thanks to those of you who did so. This is being recorded so that you can watch it again on our YouTube channel. Now, Gisela has told you about her cards. For candidates, Gisela will hold up a 15-second warning with a yellow card, then a 5-second warning with a red card, and after that time is up, you will be muted. So candidates, please ensure that you can see the timer's screen while you are speaking. Thank you.
And now for the most interesting part of our session, getting to know our candidates. And that will be 2 minutes per candidate. So please introduce yourself, candidates, with specific reference to skills and experiences that make you a good candidate for a governance board, one that sets policy but does not very often make operational decisions. So I'll call upon, I think, Gisela, would you like to show Nasser's video first? Nasser Dean Chalifu's video?
I am just going to restart that share because I forgot to turn the sound on. So share sound, optimize for video. Okay, I think we are good to go. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to play the video that Nasser sent. This is the only time that we will be hearing from Nasser today. He's unable to join us in person, and this is the single video that he sent us. So I'm going to make this large screen, and I will start.
What is the cause of all this division and apathy? Who represents the poor? Is this what we want? We cannot get to the root of this problem. But what can we do? There's no perfect answer. I think we should be putting more on the table. Maybe something like this. It's only a matter of time. Or maybe supporting the grassroots movement. But not this. I'm here because I understand the importance of action, and we're running out of time.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I cannot be with you today, but if you have any questions, please send me an email, and I will do my best to get back to you. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Nasser, if you're tuning in for that great video. And now we'll call upon candidates in alphabetical order by first name to give their 2-minute candidate statement. But before we begin, we would like to reiterate that we profusely apologize if we have to abruptly cut you off after the time limitation. So I'll first call upon Christopher Mohan to give his 2-minute candidate statement. Over to you, Christopher.
Thank you, Tara. Excited to be here. Thank you to the folks here live and those watching the recording. My name is Chris, and I'm calling in today from Toronto, Treaty 13 territory. I'm running to be a Fair Vote Canada board member with a main purpose of supporting a strategic direction that seeks to engage more youth on electoral reform. I'm a recent graduate from Western University, where I studied software engineering and business administration. And I've had the opportunity to sit on the boards of provincial and federally incorporated non-for-profit organizations representing diverse youth across the country. My governance experience includes strategic planning, interorganizational relationship building, financial oversight, and equity, diversity, and inclusion policies. I'm eager to help develop a plan for how we can bring this issue to universities and high schools across the country. By next fall, Gen Z and millennials will make up the majority of eligible voters in Canada. And although they're not historically known for their political engagement, I think we have a responsibility to help break through the apathy and disenfranchisement of this voting bloc and mobilize them around this issue as a solution to our calcified electoral system. I've been volunteering with Fair Vote in different capacities since 2022 in London, Ontario, Vaughan, and Toronto. I've had the opportunity to meet so many amazing, passionate volunteers who care about fixing our electoral system so that we have a government that truly represents us. I believe we need to continue this momentum by trying out new forms of engagement, reaching new audiences, and getting creative. Thanks for taking the time to engage with this process and listen to our statements. I'm eager to answer any questions you may have for me, and I hope you'll place your trust in me to help steer this organization in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you for that statement, Chris. And now I'd like to pass it over to Helen. Helen, if you could give your statement, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Helen McDonald, and I started working a long time ago in the federal government. And right now I am living and loving Victoria, British Columbia, which is the home of the Lekwungen people. I did a variety of roles with the federal government as a program evaluator, as a policy analyst. I've spent some time in the private sector. I moved up the ranks and ended up working as a senior associate deputy minister at mostly what was called Industry Canada. And there the organizations I was running promoted digital government, developed privacy and anti-spam legislation, supported the IT industry, and managed the radio frequency spectrum for large sums of money. When I retired, I thought I needed to contribute a bit more to society, so I ran for the board of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. This is the nonprofit organization that manages the .ca domain. I was elected. In my next year, I became vice chair, and I served as chair for the following 4 years. And I learned a lot about how nonprofit boards should operate. I took a variety of Institute of Corporate Directors courses. I read a lot about how boards operate and just doing the job itself. That took considerable time. And after 6 years, I thought I should move on. I'm on 2 boards currently. One, a local jazz and classical music festival board. I'm the secretary by acclamation. And my local community association, I'm a volunteer expert on governance. So it should be clear from my background that I am not an expert in proportional representation. It is a cause I've supported, but based on the few webinars you've offered and other materials, that's about all I know about it. But I thought one of the skills you were looking for was governance expertise, and it's for that reason that I've applied. Whatever the outcome, will be supporting Fair Vote Canada, and if elected, I will look for ways in which I can ensure an effectively functioning board.
Thank you so much for that, Helen. And just to let you know, I'm also on the board of New West Film Society. So we most welcome artists over here. So thank you for that. And the next person on my list is Kieran. Am I pronouncing that correctly, or is it Kieran?
Yep, Kieran is fine. So my name's Kieran Shukevich. I'm calling from Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory, the Anishinaabe Cree, Dakota, Dene, Oti Cree, and homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm a husband, father of 3 young children who you may hear in the back during this short presentation, and we have a golden retriever. In my professional life, I've worked many jobs, including kitchens, call centers, and various assembly lines. But in the last 10 years, I've worked in immigration law offices as a legal assistant, and now I work in public administration. My first serious political engagement was in 2017, when I had the opportunity to use the skills I had learned as a legal assistant to launch a charter challenge to abolish the candidate deposit, or wealth test as I called it. At the time, prospective candidates for federal elections had to cough up $1,000 to participate. And I was happy to say that the case was successful, and today, whether rich or poor, Canadians are allowed to put their name up for federal election. In the last few years after that, my brother and I began spearheading what we thought it was funny to call the longest ballot committee. It started with just a group of our friends, and we had a lot of fun. So every year since 2021, we try and break the record for the longest ballot in Canadian history, and do this as a way to get people talking about electoral reform. So our first long ballot took place where I lived in St. Boniface, St. Vital in 2021 with a total of 21 candidates. Then the next year, we got 40 in Mississauga Lakeshore in a by-election there. And last year, we got 48 in Winnipeg South Centre. And right now, we're looking forward to another record-breaking one this summer in the upcoming by-election in Toronto, St. Paul's. The project has been a lot of fun, but it's always a challenge. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of coordination, administration, back and forth with grumpy returning officers, and of course, speaking to media. So that's my story. I think I'm a passionate and active supporter of our pro-democracy movement, and I'd be thrilled to take this formal board position to do more and contribute to the good work Fairville Canada is doing. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kieran. And I think you've done tremendous work. It's quite exhausting listening to all that you've been doing. So now I'll pass it on to Mike, who's next on my list. Thanks. Over to you, Mike.
Perfect. Thank you. So good morning or afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Gisela, Wilf, Tara, for organizing this. I've been serving on the board of Fair Vote for a little under a year. I joined roughly at the end of the summer last year. I had been in last year's election and had been one of the last candidates to be below the cutoff. So it was a great experience to get to know the board itself and join the finance committee and understand how the board itself works and how we work in tandem with the operations and how we split that governance. I do have a formal training in governance along with a few other formal trainings. I have a ASC, which is, I'm a Montrealer. So I do speak French and English, and it's the French equivalent of the ICDD. So it is a formal training of board governance. I have gone through the entire program, graduated, and have been applying it both to Fair Vote Canada and with a lot of the other volunteering that I do with startups and scale-ups. I work with a lot of accelerators. I believe in entrepreneurship is a way for everyone to have a better shot at a better life. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time, other than my professional life, which is as a practicing attorney for a large cooperative. I take a philosophy of nose in and fingers out. I think it's very important to have that distinction on a governing board of not being too detailed in the operations. And I've tried to apply that so far in the mandate that I've had in the past year. I've helped with certain IT files and with certain, because of the finance committee and trying to raise the financial knowledge of the board as a whole without being too involved. I say I have 10 seconds left, so I'll leave the rest for my final statement.
Thanks so much, Mike. And you know that we really appreciate your expertise on the board. And next, I'll call on Ryan to just give us his candidate statement.
Hey, hi, I'm Ryan. I'm pronounced he, him. I live on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations here in Vancouver, BC. Been on the board the past 3 years, where I served on the finance committee with Mike, and before that I was on the board between 2012 and 2015. So the board experience, I was a governor at the University of Toronto for 3 years, and politically I'm pretty active, albeit disgruntled as a federal Liberal, so don't hold that against me too much. In terms of what I do in Fairvote right now, I do take the time to try to help out actually with some of the operational stuff, which is not the role of the board. It's just as a volunteer, but writing some of our helping write, I should say, some of our releases and blogs, and doing some of our modeling for what elections would have been like under different voting systems, both proportional and not. In terms of the strategic direction, I think we have to, my view as a past or current board member and a prospective future one is that I think we need to be nimble and opportunistic, that we can't really dictate the conditions that are going to make proportional representation have it stay in the sun, but we can try to take advantage of those when they come about. So that means having enough resources, having enough volunteers, having the infrastructure in place so that if we can get a party on board and we can nudge them, and if they form government, ideally a minority government, because I think they'll be more likely to carry through, follow through on their promises, then we have some resources there to try to put our fingers on the scales a little bit. One comment I just make, Nasser's presentation, I wasn't able to hear the audio very well. I wonder if we could do that again at the end. But yeah, otherwise I'm happy to take any questions from going forward here, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ryan. And, as I like to call Ryan, fair vote royalty. So, yeah, thank you for that overview. And I'll pass it on to Robert, who's next on my list. Robert, have you have to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear what name you said. Sorry. Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. My name is Robert Morris, and I live in Toronto on Treaty 13 territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I hold a master's degree in environmental studies, where I focused on biodiversity policy, and an undergraduate degree with a joint major in environmental studies and political studies. My interest in electoral reform started during my undergrad once I realized the relationship between electoral systems and objective measures for equality, political engagement, and environmental performance around the world. Throughout my career, I've worked for different government departments and agencies, developing projects, managing complex projects, and carrying out strategic planning for those organizations. These experiences prepare me to support a governance board through my organizational and strategic skill sets. I also have direct experience as a staff person supporting an environmental regulatory board in the Northwest Territories, so I have an understanding of rules and procedures for governance boards. To close, I firmly believe that switching our electoral system to a proportional representation is the only way to ensure meaningful political representation for all Canadians and reform our institutions to respond to the many challenges we currently face as a society. And I'd like to more directly support Fair Vote Canada's efforts to improve Canada's democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Robert. And I'm so happy to have a co-environmentalist joining us. So, yeah, thank you so much for that. And the next person I have is, last but not least, is Tom.
My name is Tom Hart. I am a current member representing the Maritimes on the Fair Vote Canada board. I'm a retired officer commanding, which is the rank of major from the Canadian Armored Corps. And I am a current instructor in the Canadian Adult Education Credential, which is the replacement for the GED program. There are really just 5 things that I think that I would like to talk about today that I bring as skills to the board. I bring an ability to think strategically and to contribute to the organization's long-term planning and vision. I think I have a good understanding of financial statements, budgets, and financial management principles to be able to add value to our discussions. My military experience provides strong leadership skills in working collaboratively and effectively with fellow board members, the staff, the volunteers, and stakeholders. And I bring a knowledge of governance principles, legal requirements, and regulatory frameworks that I apply in the governance committee within the Fair Vote Canada board. And finally, I have what I believe are excellent communication skills, including the ability to articulate ideas clearly. I listen actively and engage with diverse points of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Tom. And we do know you work very collaboratively with all of us. So thank you for that. And over to you, Will.
Yep. I will now.
Sorry, well, can I just address Ryan's point about Nasser's video? I agree. It was very difficult to hear. It was difficult for us to hear as well. We tried a few different ways to make it as loud as it'll go. What I can say is that we will post the link online with the candidate bios. So hopefully people can try it again on their computers off the webinar. Thanks for that suggestion, though, Ryan.
Okay, so next we are going to hear people answer a question that they have chosen to answer. We gave them a list of 8 questions and they have let us know which question they will choose to answer. So I'm going to deal with the questions in the order that we asked them, and I'll start with Kieran, who will answer question number 1.
Okay, so the question was, what do you feel are the biggest obstacles we currently have to realizing meaningful electoral reform in Canada? I've knocked on lots of doors collecting nomination signatures, and what I always hear loud and clear is that Canadians are very supportive of democracy, but they're very upset with the way it's working now. And I think the biggest obstacle to why that hasn't changed is because of our politicians. We have a system in place where the party that won the last election is the one who decides whether we change the system for the next or whether they make any electoral reforms. And that clearly, it's very hard for a party to ever change a system which brought it to power. In my mind, and I think probably most of ours, we can see that there's a very clear conflict of interest at play. When parties are in charge of changing rules, they can't help but think of how this might help or hinder their own campaign the next round. So we need to be loud and clear in pointing out this conflict of interest. So it's clear that politicians shouldn't have their hands in election rules, and there should be a. Thank you.
1 minute is not a long time. This was a popular question. Ryan and Tom have also chosen to answer it. So next is Ryan.
Yeah, I'd say what the previous comments are correct is I think there's 2 real barriers. One is the no turkeys voting for Thanksgiving issue that mentioned that there's a partisan self-interest thing here, and it's even worse than just the parties. Like you look at a Liberal in Alberta would have an interest in proportional representation, but their voice isn't as strong within the party as a Liberal in Toronto or Montreal, who even with the bad polling right now still do all right under first past the post. The other is that civics education in this country is quite poor. It's been cited as a reason why we have such low turnout, but something like 45% of people think we have proportional representation already. That's a huge barrier to us to cut through. Right? People don't understand the current system. I don't think fixing either of those is going to be entirely under our control. We can't control the education system or the partisan situation, but we can put our fingers on the scales a little bit and try to overcome these barriers.
And next is Tom.
I look at it from several perspectives. First, there's a lack of consensus. It is clear that the public wants a change, but obviously the political parties are not willing to do that. Even within the political party of the Liberals themselves, the people that support or the ground base, they changed what they thought was supposed to happen, but the people that are elected aren't willing to do that. Second thing is there is a lack of political will, as people have pointed out. The first past the post means that they have to do less work. So that's not what they want. We need to increase public awareness and education so that they fully understand the differences between the systems that we have now and the advantages of what public proportional representation provide. That we have constitutional considerations we have to look at, specifically with regards to Quebec. There are, of course, regional and partisan concerns in those particular issues, and of course, timing and priorities. Right now, we have a problem with climate change.
Thank you, Tom. And next, I am going to question number 2, which Robert would like to answer. Robert?
Yep. So the question is, what are the barriers to growing our movement, and what strategy should Fair Vote Canada consider to increase our supporter base? So I believe the average voter does not really see electoral reform given as a priority, given the other challenges we face, like cost of living, housing, the state of the healthcare system, and climate change. When people are really worried about keeping a roof over their head or paying for groceries, it's hard to convince them that electoral reform is a means to achieve those policy outcomes. Some of the strategies that Fair Vote Canada could undertake, it would be increasing the number and distribution of ad campaigns for public awareness to connect pocketbook issues to the performance of proportional systems around the world. Those campaigns could then transition to how the different political parties in Canada compare on those issues and how collaboration across the system would look under a proportional system. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Robert. The next question is number 6, and I'll read it out. How will you leverage your own network and personal connections to advance the cause of proportional representation? And Chris will answer that.
I'm muted. Great. Thanks, Wilfred. So as a recent graduate, I've been very involved in student unions provincially, federally. Like Ryan, I was involved in the Canadian Federation of Engineering Students. And so I have a strong understanding of the advocacy organizations that operate locally, provincially, and federally that Fair Vote can partner with to amplify electoral reform. Many of these groups have their own lobbying full-time staff, organizations like USA, UCRU, CASA, and if we can get on side with them, we can amplify our voice when speaking to elected officials. I also currently work at a nonprofit climate organization that's connected to a network of NGOs across Canada that set strategic priorities for political strategy. And we're always talking about electoral reform. And I think that's a ripe conversation to start to connect strong climate policy to electoral reform. And I think if we can make that message clear, we can also open up some new and exciting funding opportunities for Fair Vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now I'm going to move to question 7, which Mike Smith will answer, and I'll read it. Fair Vote Canada faces special challenges as a board that is spread across the country and never meets in person. What are your suggestions for building a feeling of unity and teamwork on the board?
Thank you, Wilf. So I think I'll start by saying, I think we can all agree we're social animals. And whether you're in politics, business, at the end of the day, it's about unifying people and working with people. And that's transversal. So I'm reticent to use buzzwords, but mindfulness and respect are key elements of building a board with different cultures, with different locations across the country towards a common goal. And I think the goal setting and the investment of time that we spend in getting to know each other and working together is really what makes the glue of the board work as a unified team. When I joined the board initially, I spent a lot of time just getting to know people one-on-one and talking to people through the board meetings. I think that is the best way to get to understand people, to understand their motivations, and even if you disagree, to find a common ground on the same page.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I will turn the next session over to Tara.
Excuse me, sorry, don't I get to answer a question?
Oh, Helen.
I'm number 7 as well.
I beg your pardon. I'm very sorry. Helen, question number 7 as well.
Thank you. I think on all the boards I've been on, for the last few years, they've all been mostly virtual, but there are ways to help people engage and make sure that the board is functioning well, and I think that means you need a little more time during the calls. So it's not, we have to keep to the second and move along with the agenda. You have to allow people to expound a bit or express their views. I think building time in after a meeting to find out how well it's gone also allows people to express what they liked or disliked about it, and you'll learn more about it. Learn more about them, excuse me. The orientation session for board members, I think, is also an important way for people to explain about what they care about. So you understand what the skills and experience that they are going to bring to the table. Same thing with the board self-evaluation annually. It's a chance to find out what people think is working or not working. I don't know whether Fair Vote Canada has visits where you group together in a region or a city and meet. That was an opportunity for us on CIRA for board members to engage as well, which gets you to know the few other board members who are showing up. So I think those would be some practical ways in which you might assist in overcoming the disadvantages of all virtual. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. I apologize for skipping over you. That was my oversight, and I'll turn this next section to Tara.
Thanks, Wilf. And so the second question period is, all candidates have had a chance to prepare for the following questions, but they don't know which one they will be selected to answer. So the committee has assigned questions to each of the candidates at random. Now, this will be in reverse alphabetical order by first name. So the first question number 2, is for Tom. What do you think are the characteristics of a great board member?
I think the characteristics would include integrity and ethics. A great board member upholds highly ethical standards. They have to make a commitment and accountability. They have to demonstrate a strong commitment to the organization's missions and goals and stakeholders, and they have to fulfill their responsibilities. They have to be involved in strategic thinking and understanding financial statements and budgets. They have to have strong leadership skills that are essential to be able to work and collaborate together. They have to have good communication skills in articulating ideas clearly. They have to be a team player. They have to work well in a team environment and respect diverse perspectives. They have to have the ability and they have to have the ability to be able to learn, to be open to what's there. They have to be dedicated to the mission and its impact, and they have to be ethical and legally compliant.
Thank you very much for that, Tom. And the second, or question number 6, is, how would you champion diversity, equity, and inclusion as a board member? And that's for you, Ryan.
Sorry, muted there. I think one thing we need to do a better job of is actually reaching out and recruiting more diverse voices to our board. And there's a recruitment problem that we have, and we can see that there's 8 candidates and 7 are men. That's not ideal. And there's different layers to diversity. There's ethnic diversity. There's age. There's gender. There's geography as well that we want to be spread across the country. And so that's a problem. And I don't necessarily think I think it's something the board needs to do collectively better. And the other is a retention problem that I think that we've had people who brought diversity to our board have been more likely to drop off the board. And I think that's a cultural problem where we need to listen to these voices a little bit better, or a lot better. And also maybe be a little bit more upfront about the expectations of what people are getting into. That might hurt the first part though. So, yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Ryan. I tend to agree with you, being racially diverse myself. Okay, and now this is for Robert. Robert, can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. So this is question number 3. What are the primary responsibilities of a governance board?
Really, the primary responsibility of the governance boards is to ensure legal compliance with the board's financial requirements and bylaws. Well, really evaluating the performance and outcomes of the organization to ensure progress with the goals and purpose of the organization.
Thank you for that. Good answer. And the next question, question number 1 is for Mike. What do you know about our organization? Easy one.
Yeah, so I kind of feel like you lobbed me a tennis ball way up in the air. I have been serving for Fair Vote Canada for close to a year. So I am familiar with the, I guess, inner workings, the personalities, at least of the current board. Obviously, we'll mix it up. I am obviously familiar with the mission. I heartily believe in it. I live in a riding which has, for my entire life, voted Liberal. And it's extremely frustrating to not see change. So the different theories of change, the different activities we've been doing to try to promote our cause, I've been part of those discussions. I believe in those discussions. Again, I'm staying high level because I think a lot of people here do understand them. So I don't think I need to discuss what the details are, but I wholeheartedly understand what Fair Vote is trying to do. And if that opportunity is there, I will be more than proud to have been part of it.
Thanks so much for that answer, Mike. And now for question number 4, Helen, this is for you. How would you describe the difference between operational and governance roles?
I think one of our colleagues said it nose in, fingers out. The governance board is to advise and to do a few functions well, but they are not to run the organization or make operational decisions. That's management's concern. So the governance board, that I've been only on governance boards, and they tend to look at how well is the board functioning? Are we getting the right kind of candidates? What kind of policies might we need that would ensure that the board is functioning well? The boards I've been on always had a finance committee, they had an HR committee. So those roles of the relationship with the executive director or with the CEO or with the president, whoever you're going to call it, that was the HR, and finance was worried about whether things were tickety-boo with all the regulations. So it was really trying to make sure from a governance perspective that the board and the board interface with the organization were effective and smooth and doing the things that we should be doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen, for that answer. I think you have it much more put together than I do where operational and governance is concerned. So really good for that. And I think the last person is Chris with question number 7, which is your primary area of interest among the tasks that the Fair Vote Canada board is responsible for? And how do you see yourself contributing?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Tara. I would see my primary interest in strategy and relationship building, and I think those two things are deeply intertwined. I'm currently working with Anita as a volunteer side. I'm trying to connect with young groups and getting them connected into Fair Vote. And I think there's opportunities to also explore that at the board level for a higher level strategy. In general, I think, and it's been mentioned, Fair Vote needs to try and reach new audiences and collaborate with different groups. I think student groups are one of those primary targets, perhaps climate groups or other issue-based groups that will benefit from electoral reform. And I think it would be amazing to see those kind of cross-organizational collaborations, other organizations amplifying our work, because our issue is so foundational to so many different decisions our government makes. And as I mentioned earlier, I do think there is an opportunity to also open new funding opportunities if we show that we're able to work with other organizations. Thank you.
Thanks again. Oh my goodness. Perfect answers out here. And for the third round, I think we're done with this.
Tara, you are using an old version, I think. We realized we had missed Karen. So I believe Karen has not had a chance yet to answer the question. Oh. And if you don't mind, I'll just go ahead and read it because I know which one has been missed. So Karen, your question is, what do you see as the primary annual tasks of the Fair Vote Canada board?
Okay, well, I'll be very honest with you as a newcomer to the higher levels of Fair Vote. I just went and looked at the documents that were provided to see what the answer was to this question. So thank you very much for the easy one, but certainly ensuring legal compliance, ensuring fiscal accountability, leading ongoing board renewal, and conducting performance evaluations of the ED. It's all right there. I know what it is, but I'm happy to learn more about what all that means. Thank you very much.
Sorry for that, Kiran. We're really fumbling today. And thanks for your patience. And now I'll pass it on to Will for the third round of questions.
Thank you, Tara. So, folks, this is fun because this is where we find out whether candidates can think on their feet. These are surprise questions that they don't know are coming. So they're going to have 1 minute each. And we are going to give them a different question chosen at random from among those submitted. So I'm going to start with Ryan, and here's your surprise question. We've been at electoral reform for 100 years in Canada. It's a tough nut to crack. What gives you hope that electoral reform is possible?
I think, I recall a poll about the fall of the Berlin Wall, about who people in West Germany were asked if they thought they would see the Berlin Wall fall in their lifetime. And 6 months prior to the fall of the Berlin Wall, a majority said they didn't think it would ever happen. So, change is possible even when it looks bleak. And I think we can keep trying. And I don't have to win a fight for it to be worth fighting either. But I think we will win it if we keep up the fight.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm going to turn next to Tom Hart. Tom, are you bilingual in both official languages, or do you have some capability in French?
No.
All right, short answer. Helen, why should folks vote for you to become part of Fair Vote Canada's board? What are your superpowers? How will you add value to the board?
I don't know. I listen to my colleagues and I think, why would you vote for me? I don't have the on-the-ground expertise and understanding of Fair Vote Canada and its history as you do. What I bring is governance abilities. I'm dispassionate. I'm not trying to be in the trenches with you. I'm not trying to be operational, but I understand how to set strategic priorities. I understand how to set goals and measure performance. I understand how to make policy. I can write effectively. Oui, je parle français. And I understand the importance of the relationship with the executive director, that's something that should be carefully managed. And you're not just looking at performance, you're looking at, is she happy? What does she need to help her in her role? Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
Can I say that I didn't understand the question from Wilf because I thought Wilf was going to ask me something in French. That's why I said no.
Unfortunately, I didn't.
Okay. I have some French, but I can't speak French.
I'm going to ask Chris the next question. Board work is sometimes a grind, but there's no doubt that volunteer-led organizations are a force for good in our world. Tell us why you are interested in volunteering some of your precious personal time to be part of Fair Vote Canada's board.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I guess I'll say first, I've served previously on boards, and I've, especially as a student, I've been that very stickler getting into the details, because I truly think that if you're going to have an effective board and you're going to make sure that your executive branch is in compliance with your policies, you're seeing progress on your goals, you need to have a very detail-oriented board. So that first part of your question, I'm very excited to get into that grind, especially to answer the second part of this question, for an issue I've cared about for many years. I really hope we can see some progress on this issue. We need to see progress on this issue. I will bring that passion to not only the details, but also the very high level planning and strategy setting so we can kind of open new opportunities to get fair vote and get proportional representation have their day in the sun. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next is Robert. Robert, volunteers are the heart of Fair Vote Canada, and their contributions are important in every capacity. Why are you choosing to volunteer for the board rather than, or perhaps in addition to, volunteering on the ground in your local community?
I mean, I'm choosing to volunteer because I'm passionate about the mission of Fair Vote Canada, and I firmly believe to increase the amount of civic engagement, you can't really sit on the sidelines commenting on social media and complaining about the current state of things if you're not willing to actually get in the trenches and, fight for a better system. And I mean, I volunteer with other organizations. It's a way to basically meet more like-minded people and kind of grow your network, and at the end of the day feel like you're contributing to make a better future.
Thank you, Robert. Mike, polls show a change of government is likely. Pierre Poilievre is likely to win a majority government with around 40% of the vote. Do you see any ways to bring conservative voters into the movement for electoral reform? And yes, we apologize. This is a hard question.
I don't think it's that hard. I think Canada is on some extremes polarized, but I think most Canadians will probably fall more in the middle. I count myself as one of that. You might call me conservative, you might call me liberal. There's policies of all the traditional parties that stand to me. I'm more enlightened maybe, and I think most people here, about the political system that we're in. But I think everyone wants to have an interaction with government, and government serves a purpose and is open to any type of change. And that's why we have changes in government at different periods of our existence. So bringing in conservative voters, I think, is very easy. I think there is no true conservative voter. There is no true liberal voter unless you're further on the fringes. Most people are centrist. And so it's about bringing them into a story and a communication and a plan that allows their voices to be heard. And if we can do that, and we can convince it, regardless of who is the leader at the top, everyone has an opportunity to join.
Thank you, Mike. Next is Kieran. Kieran, what is your primary area of interest among the tasks that the Fair Vote Canada Board is responsible for? And how do you see yourself contributing?
I guess I'm most interested in kind of the legal side of everything. As I said, I do have experience with law, certainly with election law. So I would be just for my own interest and my own abilities, I'd be most interested in that part. But I've never been on a board before. I've only really done grassroots stuff. So I'd be very interested in learning more about that and how a large organization like this works.
Thank you, Kieran. Tom, we asked you a question that you had only a short answer for. That was not exactly fair, so I'm going to try one more, Tom. We've been at electoral reform for 100 years in Canada. It's a tough nut to crack. What gives you hope that electoral reform is possible?
Just people such as ourselves. We've had what's been going on in New Brunswick. We've actually got the provincial Liberal Party to say that they will bring this on. Now, you could argue that, well, the Conservative Party, 3 premiers before, has already done a study and actually published a book and said this is how we should do it. But we're right on the cusp of getting it. The people in this country want change. And I am determined to support that effort and get that change for them.
Thank you, Tom. Tara, I'm going to turn the next section over to you.
Thanks, Wilf. And I really love this. This is the icing on the cake. These are the closing statements by the candidates. And I think they'll be again in alphabetical order by last name. We'll have to figure that out. So I'm going to start with you, Kieran, if you could just give us your closing statement, please.
So I just want to say something quickly about that question about Pierre Poilievre winning. I do think there's ways that we could change the messaging a little bit to that it would ring better with conservative voters. Not necessarily that they would be flooding over to Fair Vote Canada, but that they would ring better. And I just want to give kind of two examples of that. We have this solution of a citizens' assembly, which solves the problem of politicians writing the rules of the game in which they're participating. That solution applies to other areas that conservatives care very much about. For instance, ethics, bribery versus lobbying rules, even MP pay. There's a whole host of issues where politicians themselves are involved in writing the rules, which is a conflict of interest. And those, we have a solution, which is the Citizens Assembly. And I think there is an advantage there to applying that message a little bit more broadly to other, to Democratic Forum, which we care about, which are in the list. But yes, I just want to say now there is a bit of a dangerous void that exists at the moment because Canadians have lost trust in their democratic institutions. And I think we need to be very clear and loud to fill that space with our positive and clear demands. Thank you.
And is that your closing statement, or would you like to give it? Okay. Thanks. So the next person I have is Mike Smith.
Sure. So I'll go a little bit more traditional in saying, for myself, this is a cause I believe in. I supported it before I joined. I support it still. I think Canada has a lot of great things to it, and allowing a system that allows more voices to be heard is something that I am passionate about. To echo a little bit of what Ryan was talking about earlier, I think there is a lot of diversity in Canada. Our board may not reflect it, but diversity comes in many ways. And in some instances, I do fall into minority categories. I'm an Anglophone in Quebec. That's one type of minority. I'm a religious minority. And I think that diversity that we bring is what enriches us and makes us stronger as a team and as a country. The work that I bring at the board and what I brought so far, I don't think is done yet. And I still have a lot that I'd like to help accomplish. And so that's why I'm running again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. And the next person is Robert. Robert, over to you.
Thank you. I mean, we do face an increasingly polarized and divisive political environment that seems kind of incapable or unwilling to address the myriad of challenges we face in Canada. The mission of Fair Vote Canada really offers solutions to improving democracy for all Canadians. And I would be honored to support the organization in that effort so that one day we can have a fair, equitable, accountable, and inclusive electoral system, and by extension, a fairer society. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Robert. And the next person is Chris.
Thank you, Tara. Give me a moment. Sorry. Thank you, Tara. So thanks, folks. To close, I want to summarize why I think I would be an excellent asset to the Fair Vote Canada board. I'm passionate about this issue. I've been volunteering with Fair Vote for a few years now. At risk of being a broken record, I really want to see more young people get involved in this movement, and I have the knowledge and the relationships to build our network into the student ecosystem. I think we need to be making stronger connections with other organizations and have them amplify our work and bring this to politicians with us, for us. And finally, I have governance experience sitting on the board of provincial and federal nonprofits, and I'm ready to convert these ideas and this experience into policy and strategy for this organization. So thanks for your time. I hope you'll trust me with your vote.
Thanks, Chris. And the next person on my list is Helen.
Thank you, Tara. I've had a good life, and what I'm looking for is ways in which I could give back to the community, to the broader whole. And I look at Fair Vote Canada and I think, what an excellent cause. And the links that many of my colleagues have been making between proportional representation and getting the outcomes we need for the environment, for economic equity, for social benefits, for actually having some faith and taking some pride in the political system. All of this makes you a place that I would like to contribute to. Your materials are well written, very focused. All I'm bringing is governance. You may not need good governance, but I think keeping you very effective, keeping clear what the priorities are, and keeping very focused, I think that's how I might be able to help. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. And the next person on my list is Tom.
I think that we have to focus on 6 things with regards to strategic growth for organization: education and outreach, focusing on educating the public; coalition building, working with provincial parties as well as unions and professional organizations. We have to get into engaging youth and communities at the high school level, working with teachers in those environments to be able to get that issue out front. We have to highlight the success stories of what PR does, specifically with relation to global climate change. We have to be lobbying and advocating with politicians and legislators for this change, because the majority of the people in Canada want this. And finally, we have to have public consultations. Let's get that citizen assembly online, make it work.
Thanks very much for that, Tom. And the last person, but not least, is Ryan.
I just wanted to reiterate that I do have experience with Fair Vote Canada, so I mean, getting onboarded wouldn't be an issue. I have experience with governance outside of Fair Vote Canada with University of Toronto and several student unions there, including getting one to adopt a proportional representation, which I think they still use, I hope. And that I'm willing to do the work to do whatever it takes to get us across the line. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful candidates. I mean, you're just remarkable. I mean, I'm listening to all your answers and I'm saying, what the heck am I doing here? You guys should be leading this front. And now I'll pass it on to Wilf to end us in a good way with a brief conclusion and some announcements, I think.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Tara. So I'd like, on behalf of all of us here, to express our thanks to all the candidates. And on behalf of the candidates, I'd express thanks to our audience for your interest in Fair Vote Canada. The one thing you haven't seen here is the detailed candidate statements. They are on our website. So if you go to our website and click on Get Involved, and then click on Join the Board, you will find a whole page of candidate statements, which are well worth reading. And when you receive an email from Fair Vote Canada with voting information, the candidate statements will also be linked in that email. So I'm just going to remind everyone of the election timeline. Voting begins on May 15th. Look for an email from OPA Vote. When you are voting, please rank as many candidates as possible. Those who understand STV will know already that exhausted ballots can give unrepresentative results. So it's important to rank as many as possible. May 25th, voting closes and the results are announced. So you will get an email with the results. Everyone will. Everybody on the voters list will. On June 8th, we have our annual general meeting by Zoom, where the election results are actually ratified by a motion at the annual general meeting. Details of the speakers and discussion at the annual general meeting will be posted on our website. Finally, the last date for those who are elected to the board is on June 11th, will be a board orientation session where we will spend a lot of time bringing new board members up to speed. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you all at the annual general meeting. Watch for an email from Fairwood Canada with the details. Thank you.
Thanks to all the candidates.
Yeah.